Hello and a wonderful good morning also from my side. I'm very happy to welcome you here to my presentation called From Operators for Operators, 14 sector-specific IT security standards from the corporation UP KRITIS. I'm very delighted to have been invited to this nice congress here, and I'm very happy to share some insights on how cybersecurity is being achieved, mainly in Germany, by installing sector-specific or industry-specific standards. Before I dive into the topic, very quickly, I want to introduce myself. But primarily, I'm professor for IT security, network security in Technische Hochschule Brandenburg, University of Applied Sciences. It's a university just outside Berlin, and I have been working in IT security for about 20 years now. Mainly on network security, critical infrastructure, and my smile is the brightest when I talk about cyber attack detection. Part of this job is research, and first thing I want to mention here is our research group, MedSec it's called, and we are a research group, like a small group, 4, 5, 6 researchers focusing on IT security of hospitals, and among some other research projects I'm not going into detail today. I want to mention the Charismatica project, which I have the pleasure to be involved right now. I don't know whether you know this, in Germany we have this kind of Forschungssemester, you could translate it to the research sabbatical, so I have the pleasure to spend this half a year at Techno Campus, a university just outside Barcelona, and they have a very interesting research project called Charismatica. UPC is the chair of this project, and I'm very happy that I can contribute here. Last but not least, I have taken on a role in the UP KRITIS, the spokesman, and that's actually the role I want to talk about today. UP KRITIS is the corporation for or between operators of critical infrastructures in Germany, and I've started this position in November last year, and I want to share some details with you on what we do there regarding the establishment of sector-specific standards. So, how did I structure this presentation? I will provide some scene setting for those sector-specific security standards. So, what is this critical infrastructures in Germany, IT security legislation, and how many operators and facilities do we have? Then I will explain in more detail what those sector-specific security standards are like, what is the framework for that, and I also brought along 2 sector-specific standards from 2 sectors to give you some more insight on how does it look like in reality. And here can you download them, take them home and work with them. And last but not least, I will finish off with some details about the corporation itself. So looking on the IT security legislation in the EU over the past 10 years, about 10 years, well, I guess you are all aware of those purple items here. That's the NIS regulation. So we had the first NIS legislation in 2016, and the second one in 2023. And the green items on this timeline here is like the German IT security legislation is not like complete, neither for the EU side nor for the German side it's complete. It's only the IT security regulation which concerns critical infrastructures or the operation of critical infrastructures. So we started around the same time in Germany with the first IT security law, IT-Sicherheitsgesetz, it's like the full word for this, and then a second IT security law came into being in 2021. And yes, we are one of those who have not yet implemented NIS2 Directive, so we are well on the way here, like our government, our parliament is well on the way here. They just started like last week, the new government. I will get back to this on my very last slide. So where do we stand right now? In Germany, we have more than 1,000 operators of critical infrastructures, like energy plants, water supplies, insurances, banks, and so on and so on. And they operate more than 2,000 facilities, and 8 sectors are covered, which matches, of course, the sectors we also see on EU level. And just a number which I'm not going to follow up with in the presentation, in the fourth quarter of 2024, there were 163 breaches that had to be notified to the BSI, like breaches when running critical infrastructures in Germany. So all those numbers, well, I'm coming from academia, so we have to work with references. You can always find the source of that information on the slides. I don't know whether this will be made available. Just get in touch with me if you are interested. So this sector-specific security standards is something I haven't seen in other countries yet, although all of those EU member states, they have this NIS2 directive, or NIS directive now, NIS2 directive, and they have to implement it. So I'm not a lawyer myself. I just want to provide the anchor for where does this come from. So it's really part of the law that those security standards came up. So you might not be aware of the text, but this is the next NIS2 directive, which says, in terms of IT security, you need appropriate and proportionate technical and organizational measures if you run critical infrastructures or like essential services, whatever they are called. We always call them like critical infrastructures in Germany. Then in Germany, they said, well, we have to implement NIS2, and we always change things a bit when we come up with our national laws. So we said this has to be appropriate organizational and technical precautions, and the state of the art has to be taken into account, and then some risk management has to be employed for the final decision. And then there is something which is not part of NIS2, but it's still part of the national law, and it says that the operators may propose industry-specific security standards. So the operators, because those ones know how they have to operate their critical infrastructures, and upon request, the Federal Office for Information Security, that's like the national administration for IT security in Germany, makes sure that with this standard, they comply with state-of-the-art security when running CI. Yeah? So there is a sentence in the law, it's written in the law that those standards are possible, but may propose. So it's not like the industry has to come up with those standards, but it's an option to come up with those standards. So this law has been out there for 10 years. What has industry done with this opportunity? There is, again, the link of the BSI, the Federal Office for Information Security, which maintains a list of all those sector-specific standards which have been published so far. Yeah, and you can see those are standards which cover very different sectors of critical infrastructures. So we have food, for instance, here. We have, well, it's insurance here. Then we have health care on this side, heating networks, energy, food again. And two examples I will provide some more details on in a second is the hospital example and the housing and hosting example. Because I cannot present all of them to you today, so I had to choose two examples, which fortunately also are available free for download, and you can go back afterwards and check and make use of it. Okay, so the parliament in Germany said, well, here's this opportunity. You can come up with sector-specific standards which match your industry or the needs of your industry very well. But what has to be part of this standard? What must be the content? What's the framework and everything? So the BSI, the Federal Office for Information Security, they came up with a document called Orientierungshilfe. One could say it's an implementation guide. Yeah, so how to come up as operators, how to come up with such a standard. And for those who are dealing with information security management, there's not much surprises in here. So you have to do some governance, you have to do some professional IT management, business continuity management, and so on, no surprises. But of course, which has to be part of such a standard is the industry-specific technology and the core components. Otherwise, there's loads of standards out there doing generic IT security, information security management, ISO, or the German standard IT Grundschutz. So the point is putting the industry-specific items in this standard and then agree upon it and submit it to the BSI, which will say, okay, yeah, this is state of the art, use it, and off you go. You are compliant with the IT security legislation. So taking this into account, I will now present some more details from two B3S, sector-specific security standards. The one, B3S, is the housing, hosting, and CDN, like in the ICT sector, and the second one will be from hospitals. So just a quick overview. What are the critical services covered by this standard? Well, storage and processing of data by the information technology industry within the ICT sector, and then the focus apparently being on housing, hosting, and content delivery networks. Yeah? So you have to name which processes are covered by the standard, and the BSI approves the standard, like after some negotiation, and only those operators can use the standard, which only those operators can prove compliance with IT security legislation if they operate those services here. Yeah, it's only relevant for those services which are mentioned in the standard itself. The great thing here, and I didn't know before I prepared the slides for today, it has been translated to English. So there is a standard made from operators. It's like really from operators for operators. It's like by purpose in the title. It's from the operators. They wrote down what is important when running critical infrastructure in those areas, housing, hosting, CDN, and they have translated it to English. Just this year, it's like just before publication. So the German document can be downloaded already, and the principal author told me that it has been finalized, the English translation, and it's now under quality assurance and will be published very soon. So this standard will be available in English. So I'm not reading the table of contents for this standard. I just brought it or put it on that slide for reference. So of course, it is picking up on the contents that has been ruled by the implementation guide of the BSI. So all this content is part of the standard here. And then you can see that there has been some separation again inside the standard. So section 2 is dealing with the housing part, and section 3 is dealing with the hosting and CDN part. And in section 4, you have like the joint annex again, which is covering the KRITIS relevant elementary threads here. Yeah? And I just brought an example with me from the industry-specific hosting and CDN technology. So it's all described in this document. There's one screenshot here, and one of the challenges or one of the specialities you face in when doing the hosting service or when providing hosting services is that you have a shared responsibility and shared access to your environments. So the hosting customer has some access, and also the operator has some access to the environments. And this has to be described, and you have to derive certain controls from this scenario, from this setup, in order to have a secure overall system, management system. Yeah, so this is only an example. I got in touch with the principal authors of those two security standards and asked them for what is your primary challenges, what do you think is like the major specifics of your sector? Well, you saw at the slide before, like it was big global player companies which were part in the process, so they all agreed upon this standard to be the B3S for those three services which I described. And the challenges for this standard, the principal author told me, well, we have the topic of detection of cyber attacks. That's like one more speciality we have in Germany. It's by law that all operators of critical infrastructures implement detection of cyber attacks. It's not like part of the risk management only, it's by law they have to do it. And also an implementation guide has come out here, and they have to integrate this information into the standard now. So some other implementing document from EU level also is to be incorporated in the follow-up standard, and then will be released a follow-up version. So there is one version out there. The operators in Germany use this version of the standard already to define and operate their information security management system. It has been translated to English, so you can download it, and it's still, it's not still in work, so they work already on follow-up versions to keep it up to date. Second example will be the hospitals. I told you in the beginning, I'm heading the MedSec research group, so this is like a sector I'm working with very deeply, very intensely. So I have worked myself with this standard, and in the beginning, like 5 years back, when I started my position at university, it helped me a lot to understand the sector. Yeah, because they describe what are the sector-specific business processes, what is the sector-specific IT, what is the sector-specific operational technology, and so on. So it's a very good entry point document for understanding the operation. So the focus here is on inpatient treatment, covering all the business processes which are relevant here, and outpatient care is not covered. So again, if somebody comes, some operator comes and says, I'm doing outpatient care, he is applying, or they are applying this standard to operating their CI, and then they're putting the audit report to the BSI. The BSI will say, I'm sorry, this standard has not been approved to be valid for outpatient care, it's only for inpatient care. Yeah? So this is only available in German, and I know about the discussion to provide English translation, but I'm not aware of any activity really doing it. But like LLMs will help you nowadays. Again, it's free of charge, so there is no license. I brought those two examples, which are both free of charge, but that does not apply to all the standards here. So some of them you need to pay a fee, and others you have to reach out to the principal authors or to some point of contact and ask for that. But those two are free of charge and can just be downloaded. So the working group, the sector-specific working group, medical care, this is the CISOs of the hospitals. They have organized in the UP KRITIS, drafted and created this standard, chaired by the German Hospital Federation, and the BSI is part of the process as well. So the BSI not only kicks in when the standard has been finished and now approve it, but they're part of the drafting process already to incorporate their needs and positions. So again, the table of contents, and again, I won't read it. So you see, again, all those, well, I highlighted a few items which I think are especially relevant for showing that we have sector-specific standard here. So the core processes are described in 3.2.1, the industry-specific applications, and if you look further down here, you can see all those threats to critical industry-specific technology and software, and I'm not reading all of them, but they have a section for hospital information system, a section for laboratory information system, and really not like, well, I don't want to blame academia, but like really from the operators for the operators. So they really wrote down what they did in their day-to-day operation when securing those critical infrastructures. So one example here for the hospital information system, this is like an informal translation. There's no English translation of this document. And it tells like the hospital information system is like the heart of a hospital in terms of IT, of course. Yeah, in terms of IT, the hospital information system is the heart. And then, like, it's not even the full paragraph here. It's more provided on what the DHIS is about. So again, I had an exchange with the principal author of this document and asked what are the specifics and what are the challenges. Well, they have very industry-specific business processes, although I would think this applies to all sectors, like they all have their own business processes. But there's one thing I completely share, they also have industry-specific IT and especially OT. Like we know IT being like computers, information technology, and OT being the operational technology, like the ICS and other critical sectors, let's say. But in hospitals, the OT will be medical devices, and that's much more diverse than we find for like industrial control systems in other sectors. There's challenges for the sector which had to be addressed in the standard. First of all, we have a very heterogeneous IT landscape. There's very little standardization in hospitals regarding the IT and IT security, so a high grade of heterogeneity. And there's one thing which really surprised me when we talked about this about two years ago. Normally, you would say you have a critical infrastructure, like a power plant. You put a big fence around this critical infrastructure asset and nobody can enter it. For a hospital, this does not work. Like, you want to open up the doors to the hospitals for the patients to come in, and this is like an extra burden or an extra challenge they face. Okay, like bringing things together a little bit, what is the overall challenges of B3S, of sector-specific security standards? Well, first of all, NIS in 2015-16 started like with a small group of operators, like I think vital services, or essential services they were called back then. We call them critical infrastructures. But now NIS2 is like this. Like in Germany, we have now hundreds, like 300, 400 operators. Well, there were other numbers. But like it will be 10th time, 20th time the number of operators being part of NIS2 compared to NIS1. Yeah? So there's much more companies being part of the game now, but they must not necessarily achieve the same level of security. So maybe there must be some scalability in what level of security needs to be achieved. And this is now a challenge for those B3S, because they have only been fitted towards this one group of critical infrastructures. Then it's very hard to compare the security levels from one sector to another sector. And last but not least, well, it's a cybersecurity congress, but security is more than only cyber. We also have like the CER directive on EU level, which like brings all this game of security from cybersecurity to the physical world now. And this still has to be implemented on national level, but there's also this opportunity of having sector-specific standards, and the question is, do we want one standard for cybersecurity and physical security, or two standards? The discussion is ongoing right now. Finishing off my presentation on what is this role of UP KRITIS, of this cooperation UP KRITIS regarding the B3S, the sector-specific security standards. I mentioned already for the standard for hospitals that some kind of BUC is the abbreviation for sector-specific working group. Like it's those CISOs from the hospitals, they organize in this BUC, sector-specific working group, and they often act as authors for the standards. Like not all of them, but most of the standards, of the 14 standards, have been drafted by those working groups here. And those working groups, they are part of the UP KRITIS. The added value, or one more added value, is that the BSI is part of the game. So the BSI is part of those working groups, and the BSI is already part of drafting the standards. And it's not only coming at the very end of the game when the standard has been finalized, and then like, oh, okay, passed, not passed. The feedback that can be provided by the UP KRITIS goes beyond the decisions of the BSI. It even goes as far as the regulation regarding critical infrastructures. So the UP KRITIS can provide feedback on how this works with the sector-specific security standards and also with other issues on protecting critical infrastructure. And then the Ministry of Interior, which is in charge of this kind of legislation, can take this into account for future work. And of course, they can exchange experiences between each other. So, just some background on the UP KRITIS, where it comes from. It's a corporation. It's like not an organization. There's no company behind it. It's like a corporation, and people put their workforce on the table. There's not like big consultancies involved also, and it's really from the operators for the operators. The operators come together and discuss their problems and come up with documents. It has been there for about 20 years now, and it had to reorganize itself twice already because of the growing numbers. Like back in 2007, at the starting point, there was only 30 organizations being involved, and as of now, we have about 1,000 organizations being part of the UP KRITIS. So most of them being operators, but also some of the associations, like associations for the operators, not associations for IT security vendors and so on, associations of the operators, and the relevant government agencies and ministries are also part of the game here. 17 sectorial working groups so working on hospitals only or only working on issues for energy plants. And those ones are the topic-related working groups. So Themenarbeitskreis, topic-related working groups like exercises, communication, regulation, whatever, 13 of them, and those ones are cross-sector. So, for really last slide now, finishing off, where does UP KRITIS go in future? Well, I just mentioned that we had some changes in 2024. So in order to cope with the growing number of participants, a new structure was installed and new so-called ERFAs are being implemented right now. So exchange of experience groups, so having regional focus groups which can help to provide opportunities to exchange on experiences. And we want to improve communication. It's like with a growing company, you have to change the ways you communicate. When we were 30 members, like everybody knew everybody and you could just like communicate directly, but now this has to change. So we want to improve internal communication as well as external communication, and like my role is part of this game, so I have just been installed to improve the external communication and spread the word about UP KRITIS being there in Germany for improving protection of critical infrastructures. Two more things coming up, NIS2 and CER regulation. I mentioned already we are lagging behind, like actually the deadline has passed already. But you have certainly heard about the elections which were taking place in February 25, and the new government has been installed only last week, the week before, like about 1 week ago. And now, of course, the national implementation of these two very important regulations on EU level have to be pushed forward, and the UP KRITIS has a role, like is known and installed as a very valuable stakeholder when you have questions about how to secure critical infrastructures. So UP KRITIS keeps on helping to shape those regulations as well as the implementations. So we are now 1,000 participants and we expect to be like 8, 9, 10,000 in the upcoming months and years, because all of those companies, operators from NIS2 will also have the opportunity to join the group. Thanks very much, and we have a bit of time left for a question.
Thank you for the presentation. Quick and fast. How everything here links with C5 and cloud environments for hospitals using SaaS, EAS, and so. Is there any connection with C5, the regulation?
C5?
C5, the cloud computing.
The cloud computing. Okay, I wasn't sure about whether it is a cloud. There is a working group, like one of the 14, I think it was. Sorry. 13 topic-related working groups, and one of those I know specifically is working on a cloud document already, but I doubt it has been released. Like, if you want, I can put you in touch with the speaker of the working group, and then you can get into an exchange. Yeah, but there's definitely some activity on that.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering if there is a different set of standards for public and private organizations. Do they have to follow the same set of standards, especially for hospitals?
First of all, nobody has to follow this standard. It's just making life easier for operators to put evidence that they have reached state of the art for IT security. So it's only an opportunity. It's not, nobody is forced to use the standard. You can also use like ISO and then put your own risk assessment. There is, for instance, for hospitals, there is no such differentiation between private or public operators. We have this challenge. I fully understand the challenge. We have the very traditional administrations, how do I call them, like the traditional administrations where they have the files and the folders and everything, so no OT, those ones are not part of the game. So they are not even part of UP KRITIS, and they don't have this opportunity to have sector-specific standards. And then we have those sectors like water supply, hospitals, where you have public and private operators, and here they come together and define together a standard which applies to both worlds. Yeah, but there is no standard. But the other way around, sorry, there is also standards for public administration, like the traditional administration, but they are drafted in a different way, so they're not coming from the operators, from the agencies, they're coming from the BSI. And then by law, they have to be implemented by the public administrations. But those ones, again, do not apply to the hospital which is operated by a public body. There was another question.
Hello, thank you for your presentation, appreciate it. I've got sort of a twofold question. So the first one is, so for B3S, the standard, was there a point at which there was sort of a gap assessment that was done against a standard like ISO 27001? And if so, what were some of the main, like some of the key points that were identified as gaps that could be slightly different or completely different than any of those standards?
If I understand the question correctly, then like what is it based on, and what is
like
different
if you,
to
like
those?
if you did a gap assessment on B3S and 27001, and what were some of the main gaps identified?
Well, we had an hour ago a presentation on standards, which I think was more top-down, like really coming from the standardization bodies, and this is more like, I would say with my own words, it's like a bottom-up approach. You really have the operators sitting together, and as I said, I'm very close to the operators of hospitals. They sit together and say, how do we implement our ISMS? Like, they are not only starting ISMS because there is a law. Many of the hospitals, or some, I don't know the numbers, they had ISMS before, and they checked what can we use for our ISMS, or what have we used for our ISMS already. And then we have some standards from the German Institute for Standardization, the ISO 27000, and also like the German IT Grundschutz baseline security, and some others, and their internal good practices. And that's what they put on the table and come up with this standard. Already, or not all the time, integrating the BSI, the Federal Office for Information Security, in the discussion, that they say, okay, this is still acceptable for us as being state-of-the-art security when running critical infrastructure. So the threats and all these kind of things, they also have to be like put in the standard itself.
Okay. And how deep does it go into cloud computing?
Come again?
How deep does it go into requirements that deal with cloud computing?
Well, it depends on the standard. I was doing some project for the follow-up version of this one here, and I learned the B3S for hospitals is rather deep, let's say, very detailed controls and very technically saying what has to be done, like helping small hospitals really start over straight away. And then we have other B3S, for instance, for the distance heating, they have more like an ISO 27000 style of document, which is still fine, and the BSI still accepted this, providing state-of-the-art IT security for critical infrastructure protection for distant heating. But then again, this standard leaves loads of work on the risk assessment to the operator, whereas this standard, like much of the risk assessment has been done already. So either way works. The BSI can accept both versions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.